Be me, 25, living in a major city. Working a barista job that I tell people is a temporary ironic statement against corporate culture. In reality, it pays my half of the rent for a tiny apartment and not much else. Just ended things with my boyfriend of about a year. The final straw was him suggesting our big anniversary trip should be a week of camping, to reconnect with nature and save money for a down payment. I stared at him, trying to compute the sheer audacity. A down payment on what? A tent? I told him I needed a partner, not a scout leader. He didn't seem to get it, started talking about the value of shared experiences over material possessions. I packed my stuff that night. A few days later, I was venting to my friends during my shift. They get it. They always get it. One of them said that my expectations weren't too high. My ex's effort was just insultingly low. Another chimed in, saying that in this economy, a man asking a woman to split costs is basically a form of toxic masculinity. It's offloading the systemic burden onto us. It all clicked. My entire dating history had been a series of men who wanted a 50-50 partner without providing 100% security. They want the emotional support, the validation, the intimacy, but they don't want to provide. What's the point of dating a man if he can't make your life materially better? I could be single and broke on my own, thanks. That night, I made a decision. No more projects, no more potential. I was done with artists, musicians, and guys who described their job as freelance consultant. I deleted the dating apps I'd been using. They were a wasteland of men holding fish in their profile pictures. I downloaded one of those exclusive apps, the kind that makes you list your profession and income bracket. It felt a little gross, but I told myself it was just a tool for empowerment, filtering out the time wasters. I set up my profile carefully. Pictures of me looking thoughtful at a museum, laughing with friends at brunch, at a place I couldn't actually afford, reading a book in a park, cultured, intelligent, high value. For my bio, I wrote something about being a sapiosexual, looking for a meaningful connection, and wanting a partner who is ambitious and established. The keywords were there. I knew the right kind of man would understand the subtext. The swiping began. Graphic designer? No. High school teacher? Absolutely not. Personal trainer? Swipe left so hard the phone almost flew out of my hand. It was a brutal process, but I was a woman on a mission. After an hour or two, I saw his profile. The first picture was just a normal headshot. He was decent looking, but not in an intimidating way. Clean, simple. His job was listed as software engineer. Bingo. The rest of his photos were boring. Hiking, a golden retriever, a group photo where he wasn't even in the center. No signs of wealth. No fancy cars, no watches, no trips to Dubai. My friends would have called it a red flag, a sign of being cheap. But I knew the tech world. The real money guys often looked like they bought their clothes at Target. It's a weird stealth wealth thing. I swiped right. It was an instant match. My heart did a little flutter. This was it. This was the start of my new life. He messaged me first. Just a simple, "Hey, I liked your profile. You seem to have a good sense of humor." We texted back and forth for a day or so. The conversation was fine. He was polite, asked questions. I kept it light, trying to sound mysterious and interesting. When he asked what I did, I said I was in the artisan beverage industry, exploring my options. He finally asked me out. "How about we grab coffee this weekend?" Coffee. My stomach sank a little. Coffee is not a date. It's an interview. It's the lowest effort, lowest investment suggestion a man can make. I almost said no. My friends' voices were in my head, telling me to demand a real dinner, but I played the long game. Maybe it was a test, to see if I was materialistic. So I agreed with a cheerful, "Sounds lovely." We met at a trendy little coffee shop on a Saturday afternoon. I spent 2 hours getting ready to look effortlessly beautiful. He showed up in jeans and a plain gray t-shirt. Okay, definitely a tech guy. He stood up when I walked in, which was a nice touch. We ordered at the counter. He got a black coffee. I got a complicated lavender oat milk latte that cost $8. We sat down at a small table. The conversation was okay. He asked about my hobbies. I told him I loved art, foreign films, and trying new restaurants. I was trying to paint a picture of a sophisticated woman he would be proud to show off. He talked about his work for a bit, something about coding and algorithms. It went completely over my head. I just nodded and tried to look fascinated. I kept waiting for him to ask the right questions about my ambitions, my dreams. Instead, he asked what I liked to do for fun on a low-key weekend. I panicked and said I enjoyed urban hikes. The whole time I was analyzing him. His shoes were practical, not designer. His watch was a digital thing, not a Rolex. I was starting to worry I'd miscalculated. Maybe he was just a low-level coder at some dead-end startup. Then he mentioned a ski trip he took to Colorado a few months back. Ah, there it was. Skiing is not a poor man's hobby. My confidence returned. The conversation eventually died down. We'd been there for about an hour. He said, "Well, this was really nice." The check was on the table. It was one of those pay-at-the-counter places. This was the moment of truth. I reached for my purse, doing the classic slow, reluctant rummage. "Oh my gosh," I said, my voice full of fake distress. "I think I left my wallet in my other bag. I am so sorry." How embarrassing. I looked at him, trying to appear genuinely mortified. He just smiled. Not an awkward smile, but a calm, knowing one. "Don't worry about it. It's just coffee. I've got it." He stood up, took the receipt, and went to the counter to pay. He didn't make a big deal out of it. He didn't make any jokes. When he came back, he just said he had a great time and that he'd text me. I walked away feeling triumphant. Test passed. He was a gentleman. He texted me the next day. He said he wanted to see me again. This time I decided I would set the standard. I replied, "I'd love that. I know this amazing Italian place downtown. We should try it sometime." I picked the most expensive one I could think of. The kind of place with white tablecloths and a wine list as thick as a book. If he was serious, he'd take the hint. He replied almost immediately, "Sounds great. How's Friday night?" My heart soared. It was working. Friday came. I wore a black dress that I'd bought on credit, telling myself it was an investment. The restaurant was beautiful, dim lighting, soft music. He was already there, at a nice table in a quiet corner. He was wearing a button-down shirt this time, an improvement. The date felt completely different. This felt real. The waiter came over, and he handled everything smoothly. Ordered a bottle of wine that I later Googled and found out cost over $150. Okay, my calculations were correct. He had money, a lot of it. I felt myself relax. The prize was real. Now I just had to win it. My strategy for the dinner was to be a good listener, but also to subtly drop hints about the lifestyle I expected. This time, I steered the conversation. I didn't want to hear about his boring job. I wanted to hear about his life. "So, what kind of car do you drive?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He mentioned a reliable but decidedly not luxury brand, a sedan. I must have looked disappointed because he added, "It's practical for the city. Great gas mileage." I recovered quickly. That's so smart, very responsible. Next, I moved on to his living situation. "Do you rent or own?" He said he owned his condo, downtown. My smile became genuine. Owner, condo, downtown, the trifecta. "That's amazing," I said. "It must be so nice not to have to worry about a landlord." The food came. It was incredible. I made sure to talk about how much I appreciated fine dining, how it was an experience, not just a meal. I told him about my dream of traveling through Europe, not backpacking, of course, staying in boutique hotels. I was laying the groundwork, showing him the kind of woman I was, a woman with taste. He listened intently, nodding along. He seemed to be taking it all in. At one point, he told a story about a major project at work, how he and his team had to pull all-nighters for weeks to meet a deadline. He seemed genuinely proud of the accomplishment. I tried to feign interest. "Wow, that sounds so stressful," I said. "But I guess it's worth it when you're getting paid well, right?" He paused for a second. His smile tightened just a little. "The satisfaction comes from solving the problem," he said quietly. "The money is just a result." I didn't get it. Who works that hard for satisfaction? I changed the subject back to travel. The check came. It was astronomical, easily over $300. I didn't even pretend to reach for my purse this time. That was a first date move. This was a second date, a proper date. The man pays. That's the rule. He pulled out his wallet without a word and put his card down. He didn't look at the total. He didn't sigh. He just paid. I felt a wave of relief and excitement. This was the man who was going to save me from the espresso machine. He drove me home. His car was clean, but, as he said, very practical. He walked me to my door. I had a really nice time tonight, he said. Me too, I replied, giving him my best smile. He just nodded, said goodnight, and walked back to his car. No attempt to kiss me, a true gentleman. He was letting me set the pace. The next week was a blur of happy anticipation. I told my friends all about it. They were ecstatic for me. You manifested him, one of them squealed. We spent hours planning our future, my future with him. I would quit my job, obviously. Maybe I'd start a lifestyle blog, or just focus on my wellness. He would be the provider. I would be the muse. A modern partnership. I felt like I was floating. Every text from him was a little jolt of validation. But his texts were becoming a little less frequent. A day might go by without hearing from him. I started to get anxious. Had I done something wrong? Was he losing interest? My friends told me to play it cool. He was a busy, important man. I shouldn't seem needy, but after a few days of sparse communication, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to lock this down. I needed to know where we stood. We'd had 2 dates. In my mind, we were basically in a relationship. It was time for the define the relationship talk. I crafted the text message with the precision of a surgeon. Hey, I've had such a wonderful time with you. I feel like we have a real connection, and I'd love to talk about where this is going. I hit send, and my heart pounded in my chest. He replied a few hours later, I've been thinking about that too. You're right, we should talk. How about dinner this week? Yes, it was happening. He felt it too. He was ready to be serious. I suggested a place that was nice, but not as extravagant as the last one. I didn't want to seem too demanding before we were official. He agreed. The date was set for Thursday. I spent the next 2 days rehearsing my speech. I would lay out my expectations clearly, my boundaries, my needs. A strong woman communicates her needs directly. I wasn't just going to be his girlfriend. I was going to be his partner, and a partnership came with terms and conditions. I was ready to present mine. I was so sure he was ready to accept them. I felt like the world was finally unfolding exactly as it should. The hard part was over. Now came the reward. I showed up to the restaurant on Thursday feeling like a CEO about to close a major deal. I had my talking points memorized. I was calm, confident, and in control. He was already at the table, just like last time. He looked a little more serious than usual. I decided to skip the small talk. Get straight to the point. Efficiency is a power move. After we ordered, I took a deep breath and launched into my prepared remarks. So, I started, folding my hands on the table. I'm really glad we're doing this. I think it's important to be on the same page about our future. He just nodded, his eyes fixed on me. He was listening. Good. I've been thinking a lot about what I want in a partner and in life, I continued. I'm at a point where I'm ready to move past the temporary phase and build something real. I explained that my barista job was just a stopgap, that I had ambitions, big ones. I told him I was thinking of starting my own brand, maybe a podcast focused on female empowerment, or a curated social media presence. The thing is, I said, leaning in conspiratorially, a creative venture like that requires a lot of time and energy. It's a full-time job in itself, and it's impossible to pursue that when you're constantly worried about rent and bills. He didn't say anything, just kept watching me. It was a little unnerving, but I pushed on. So, in a serious, committed partnership, I see the roles as being very distinct. One partner, the one with the more established career, provides the financial stability, the foundation. That allows the other partner to pursue their passions and create value in other ways, through art, through community, through emotional labor. I took a sip of water, feeling very proud of how articulate I was being. Basically, what I'm looking for is a true partner, someone who is willing to invest in me so that I can flourish and we can build a beautiful life together. I paused for dramatic effect. I'm ready to quit my job and dedicate myself to our future, but I can only do that if I have the security of knowing that you're taking care of the practical side of things. All of it. I laid out the specifics. He would cover the rent on a new, nicer apartment, all the bills, groceries, my car payments, a budget for my brand development. In return, I finished, smiling warmly, you'll have a partner who is fully present, who isn't drained by a soul-crushing job. I'll provide the emotional support, the inspiration. I'll manage our home and our social life. It's a symbiotic relationship. I sat back, my speech concluded. I'd laid all my cards on the table. I felt powerful, honest. I looked at him expectantly, waiting for him to agree, to tell me how much he admired my clarity and vision. He was silent for a long time. He wasn't looking at me with admiration. His expression was unreadable. He just sat there, processing my proposal. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Thank you for being so honest," he said. His voice was completely flat. My heart swelled. He appreciated my directness. "That's a very detailed plan for our future," he continued. "You've clearly given it a lot of thought." "I have," I said, my smile widening. "It's interesting," he said, steepling his fingers, "because I've also been thinking a lot about what I'm looking for in a partner. I have my own set of standards, you could say." "Oh, I hadn't expected this. I thought my standards were the only ones that mattered." "I'm looking for a partner too," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "And partner means someone who contributes, not just financially, but someone who adds value to my life, just as I hope to add value to hers." He started to tick things off on his fingers, almost like he was mocking me. "First, I'm looking for someone who is curious about the world, and about me. In the hours we've spent together, you've never asked me a single meaningful question about my work, my passions, or what drives me. You've asked what I do, what I own, and what I earn." My smile faltered. "Second," he went on, his voice still calm and even, "I'm looking for someone with integrity. Someone who, for example, wouldn't pretend to forget their wallet on a first date as a test." My face went hot. He knew. He'd known the whole time. "Third, I want a partner who has her own ambitions and is actively working towards them, not waiting for someone to finance them. You say you want to start a brand or a podcast. That's great. What have you done to start? Have you recorded a single episode, designed a logo, written a business plan, or is the plan just to have me pay for it?" I opened my mouth to defend myself, but no words came out. "You've presented me with a business proposal," he said, his voice becoming sharper. "You've outlined your terms of service. You'll provide emotional support in exchange for a fully funded lifestyle, but that's not a partnership. A partnership is two people building something together. You're not asking to build with me. You're asking me to build a pedestal for you." The blood was pounding in my ears. The other diners seemed to fade away. "You want a man who earns 6 figures, he said, leaning forward slightly. "But you seem to have forgotten that a man who has worked hard enough to earn that kind of money has also learned a thing or two. He's learned how to spot a bad investment. He's learned the value of a genuine connection. He's learned that his time, his energy, and his resources are valuable, and they should be shared with someone who appreciates him as a person, not as a provider." He stopped. The silence in our little bubble was deafening. "You've passed your judgment on me based on my income," he said softly. "Now I'm passing my judgment on you based on your character. I'm sorry, but you don't meet my standards." It felt like a physical blow. The air was knocked out of my lungs. He reached into his pocket and pulled out some cash. He counted out enough for his meal and drink, and a generous tip on his half. He placed the money neatly on the table. "That should cover my share," he said, standing up. He looked down at me one last time. There was no anger in his eyes, just a sort of clinical disappointment. "I genuinely hope you find what you're looking for," he said. And then he turned and walked out of the restaurant. I just sat there, staring at the empty chair across from me. The waiter came by a few minutes later, looking from me to the cash on the table, a confused expression on his face. Will that be all, miss?" he asked timidly. I looked down at the bill. It wasn't as much as the last place, but it was still more than I had in my bank account. I had maybe $50 to my name until my next paycheck. The bill was for over 100. My face burned with a level of humiliation I had never experienced. I had to do it. I had to pull out my phone and text one of the friends who had been cheering me on. "Emergency," I typed, my fingers shaking. "Can you send me $100? I'll explain later." The reply came a minute later. "OMG, of course. Did he propose?" I felt a sob catch in my throat. The next few weeks were a miserable fog. I didn't tell my friends what really happened. I couldn't. I made up a story about how he'd revealed he didn't want kids, and that was a deal breaker for me. They bought it, they comforted me, told me I dodged a bullet, but his words echoed in my head, every single one of them. "You don't meet my standards." Me. I was the one who didn't measure up. I'd spent my entire adult life believing I was the prize, that I was owed a certain lifestyle simply for being a woman. I'd view dating as a marketplace where I was a luxury good and men were the consumers. It had never, not once, occurred to me that they were shopping with their own criteria, that they might be looking for more than a pretty face to accessorize their successful life, that they might want a partner, a real one. I kept working at the coffee shop. Every latte I made felt like a little monument to my failure. The smell of burnt espresso beans was the smell of my life. I'd see happy couples come in, laughing and talking. I'd watch them, the way they looked at each other, the way he'd listen to her story, and the way she'd touch his arm when she laughed. They looked like partners, like they were on the same team. I wanted that. I realized with a sickening jolt that I wanted that more than I wanted a condo downtown or a trip to Europe. But I had no idea how to get it. I'd based my entire self-worth on what a man could provide for me. Now I was left with a question that terrified me. Without a man to provide for me, what was I worth? What did I have to offer? The answer, I was beginning to fear, was nothing at all. A few months have passed. I deleted the exclusive dating app. I haven't been on a single date. I can't bring myself to it. The other day, a guy at the counter was friendly. He was a regular, always polite. He worked in construction, I think. His hands were calloused. He asked me if I might want to get a drink sometime after my shift. A year ago, I would have laughed in his face. This time, I just looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see his job or his income. I just saw a person who was taking a risk, putting himself out there, asking for a chance. I mumbled that I was flattered but wasn't dating right now. He just smiled and said, "No worries, have a good one." He still comes in every morning, and he's still just as polite. I think about that a lot. I still don't know what I'm doing. I'm still broke, still making coffee. But something broke in me that night at the restaurant. The delusion. I see things differently now. I see men differently. I see them as people, with their own hopes, their own fears, and their own standards. I just wish I'd figured that out before I made a complete fool of myself.